When an evil eye falls upon a happy household, everything can suddenly fall apart, and that's exactly what happened to me. My name is Zainab, and I'm 19 years old. When I was just a child, an incident occurred that shattered my entire personality. Sometimes a single trauma changes the course of one's life, and that's what happened to me. At the age of 7, my life changed so drastically that I felt as though I had grown up too soon. Because many nights my uncle did things to me that no child should ever endure. Up until the age of 5, everything in my life was normal. My mother and father lived happily together, and I was their only daughter. We had no real problems in our home. But something shifted. Arguments began to erupt between my parents for reasons I couldn't understand. I was too young to grasp what was going on. My father would return home from work in the evening, and my mother would say something that triggered him into shouting and eventually hitting her. Day by day, the arguments grew worse until they decided to part ways. I didn't know much except that my mother would often receive long phone calls, and after each one, her mood would worsen. I didn't know who was calling her or what they talked about, but those calls seemed to lead to the fights. In the end, when my father kicked my mother out of the house, she left in anger, without even looking back at me. I wanted to go with her. I cried and pleaded, but she didn't glance at me. I was only 5, and the pain of being abandoned etched something permanent into my heart. Worried about raising me alone, my father soon married again, this time to his aunt's daughter. He also sent divorce papers to my mother, and their relationship was officially over. He thought this second marriage was necessary for my well-being, but within a few days I felt pushed aside. My stepmother became pregnant, and my father began giving her all his attention. My stepmother was very beautiful and knew how to charm. Whenever my father came home, she would sway her hips, flutter around in front of him, and always be covered in heavy makeup. I had never even seen my real mother wear lipstick. My stepmother, on the other hand, was always dressed up like a bride. She had a brother who, by relation, became my maternal uncle, so I called him Mamu, uncle. He used to visit our home frequently, as he was now related to my father from both sides. I was too young to understand the complexities of blood relations or to sense someone's true intentions. I would sit in my uncle's lap, and he would kiss my cheeks or neck, stroke my back lovingly, and often bring me chocolates. He befriended me quickly, and I genuinely believed he cared about me deeply. I thought he loved me. He would often speak ill of my real mother, telling me she was a bad woman who had multiple affairs, and that was why my father had beaten her and thrown her out. I was too young to discern truth from lies. Slowly, his words began poisoning my view of my own mother. Even though my stepmother wasn't particularly kind to me, the pain of being abandoned by my birth mother made it impossible for me to love her. One day, my uncle brought a beautiful dress for me and said, "You'll look like a doll in this." I hadn't seen such nice clothes in a long time. Back when my mother was still around, she would sew dresses for me herself. Ever since my mother left, I had been wearing old, worn-out clothes. That's why I was overjoyed when I saw that Barbie-style dress. My uncle sat me beside him and said, "I'll help you wear it myself." I didn't know how to change clothes by myself back then, so I trusted him completely and handed him the dress, standing innocently in front of him. But just as he was about to undress me, my father unexpectedly arrived home. Startled, my uncle quickly composed himself, handed me the dress, and said, "Go ask your mom to help you wear this." I couldn't understand his sudden change in behavior, but I was so excited about the dress that I rushed off to show it to my stepmother. When she saw such a beautiful dress, she asked where it came from. As soon as I told her that my uncle had brought it, her face changed color. She fell silent for a while, then called my uncle into her room and told me to wait outside. Strange noises and shouting started coming from inside the room. I stood by the door holding my breath. My father had only come for a brief errand and had already left again, unaware of what was unfolding. I couldn't understand what was going on between them, but it was clear that my stepmother was not happy about the dress. After some time, the house fell silent again. Then my stepmother called me back into the room and said, "This dress is beautiful. In a few days, when I send you to your uncle's house, wear it then. Don't wear it at home now." Her attitude had suddenly changed. She was being unusually sweet. Just a while ago, her face had shown anger, but now it had all vanished. She handed me the dress and said, "Keep it in your cupboard." I was just a child, so I happily took the dress and went to my room to keep it safely among my things. A few days later, my stepmother's health worsened. Her delivery time had arrived, and she had to go to the city for proper medical care. Concerned about leaving me alone, my father began worrying. That's when my stepmother suggested sending me to my uncle's house. There was no one else at my uncle's house, no aunt or cousins. My father's uncle and aunt had passed away, and their daughter had become my stepmother. My father didn't feel good about sending me there, but my stepmother convinced him by saying, "Your daughter is very attached to Jamshed, uncle. She'll stay comfortably with him. It's only for a week. Besides, Jamshed doesn't do much work. He stays home most of the time, and we'll take care of her." Until now, my father had only seen the good side of Jamshed, so he reluctantly agreed. And I, who was already impressed by my uncle's kindness, bringing chocolates, dressing me nicely, loving me, had no objections either. My father called Jamshed uncle and entrusted me to him. Since my stepmother had to undergo a major surgery, my father would be gone for at least a week. Uncle swore in front of my father that he would take excellent care of me and that I wouldn't face a single problem. Satisfied, my father left with my stepmother in the city-bound car. My uncle then held my hand and took me to his house in a different neighborhood. He gave me a nice meal, then some chocolates, and made me sit in his lap lovingly. Later, he said, "It's nighttime now, let's get ready for bed." There was only one bed. I was a small child, so I began feeling scared. Sensing this, my uncle hugged me tightly and said, "Don't be scared. Just sleep on my bed with me." A short while later, the electricity went out. Terrified, I clung to him and lay beside him. He placed me on his pillow and covered us both with the same blanket. I started quietly reciting every prayer I could remember. The room remained dark except for a small flashlight he had left glowing in the corner. Some time passed like that, but sleep was nowhere near. A strange fear and restlessness kept me disturbed. Then suddenly, there was a knock at the door. My uncle got up from beside me and went to open it. A few moments later, I began hearing the voices of several men. At least 3 or 4 men had entered the house with my uncle, and they were speaking loudly and excitedly with him. Because of the quietness of the night, I could clearly hear my uncle's voice. What he said chilled me to the bone. "You guys took so long. I've been controlling myself for hours." She was so close to me, yet I held back. "But we always share everything equally. The money I spent on her, you all contributed too. So, how could I enjoy her alone? Now that you're here, let's all have fun together." I was only a 7-year-old child, but hearing such words in the darkness of the night made my heart race. I felt the presence of something terrible about to happen. Laughter echoed loudly from outside the room. I was so terrified that I got up and slipped into the small storage room attached to the bedroom. I had no idea what else to do. I remembered something my Quran teacher once told me. Back when my real mother was still in our house, she used to take me to learn Quran from a female teacher. That teacher once said, "Never blindly trust anyone and never accept gifts from strangers." Back then, I didn't understand her words, but now I realized I had trusted my step-uncle far too easily, and so had my father. I also remembered something my real mother once told me when we were watching a news story about a girl who had been kidnapped. "The world is a dangerous place," she had said. "You need to protect yourself. Your mother won't always be there to watch over you." Her words echoed in my heart. I looked around and, in a moment of instinct, crawled into a small trunk inside the storage room and shut it. I didn't know if what I was doing was right or wrong, but it felt like the only option. I stayed completely still inside. Soon, I heard footsteps approaching the bedroom. In the dim torchlight, I saw 4 shadowy figures enter the room. One of them said, "Why did the power have to go out now?" Uncle replied, "Well, darkness has its own thrill." Then they looked toward the bed. Seeing it empty, they panicked. "Where is the girl?" they asked urgently. My uncle, equally startled, said, "I left her here just a few minutes ago. I don't know where she went." They all turned on their phone flashlights and started searching frantically. From the crack inside the trunk, I could only see glimpses. I couldn't make out their faces. I didn't know if they looked like my uncle or if they were older or younger. I just knew I was in danger. One of the men entered the storage room with a flashlight. I held my breath. He swept the light across the room but didn't think to open the trunk. Then he called out, "She's not in here. Besides, such a young girl wouldn't hide in a dark place like this." He walked out and I let out a deep breath. I was now certain I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But leaving the storage room would have been the worst mistake, so I stayed hidden, curled inside the trunk. All around, I could hear the sound of shoes. They were searching for me like madmen. They thought I had run up to the roof as a wooden ladder led up to it and there was some moonlight up there. My uncle assumed I must have gotten scared and gone up to the roof. So they all rushed up to the rooftop, but when they found nothing there, they came back disappointed. The frantic search for me continued. My uncle's friends began to lash out at him in anger. One of them shouted, "You've ruined everything. I don't think you even brought the girl here. You probably lied to us and took our money in her name to keep it for yourself." Another accused him, saying, "I think you already had your way with her and got rid of her. Now you're pretending to be innocent in front of us." My step-uncle, furious, defended himself. "Why would I lie to you? I didn't even touch her, just for your sake. I wasn't going to enjoy her alone. We've always shared everything, and now you don't even trust me? I left her right here on the bed before answering the door. Where could a little girl possibly go? This house only has one room, a storage area, and a rooftop." The same friend who had earlier entered the storeroom said, "I already checked the whole storage room, and she's not there. Besides, how could a little girl even go there in the dark?" Suddenly, my uncle had a new idea. "Could it be," he said, "that she escaped through the window?" Everyone's attention snapped to the window. My uncle rushed to it and noticed that the latch was indeed unlocked. He clutched his head and exclaimed, "The lock is open. I think she climbed out and ran away." "But where would she even go?" he added. "Her father has gone to the city with my sister, and as for her real mother, well, we've handled her in such a way that she'll never return to her daughter, and the girl will never reach her either. She must be wandering the streets somewhere. Come on, let's look for her." The four of them rushed out of the house together. As soon as they left, I climbed out of the trunk and, seizing the moment, slipped out of the house. They had scattered in different directions to search the nearby streets, so I knew I had to hide myself from them. I was a tiny 7-year-old girl, and fortunately, I was wearing a black dress, which made it easier to hide in the darkness of night. I darted through the shadowy alleys, hiding wherever I could. Eventually, I found myself in front of a mosque. The main door was locked, but a light glowed softly from a room beside it, likely the imam's residence. It could have been a torchlight, but I didn't care. Without thinking, I knocked on the door. A kind elderly man opened it. Through tears, I begged him to let me in. He glanced around and then allowed me to step inside. His wife and 2 young daughters were also there. Crying, I told the imam everything that had happened. He was a gentle, compassionate man. He and his family had already been awake preparing for suhoor before dawn. He immediately agreed to help and gave me shelter in his home. It was now clear to me that my step-uncle was an evil man. He had brought me to his home only with foul intentions. He wanted to use me for his and his friends' wicked desires. All night I sobbed silently, remembering the terrifying words he had said, that they had taken care of my real mother. That thought broke me. Where was my mother? What had they done to her? I had believed all the lies my uncle and stepmother told me. They made me think my real mother was a terrible person. But now, something inside me told me that she had been a victim of their cruelty. Maybe even a conspiracy. Who knew what they had done to her? I told the imam everything, in full detail. By morning, he gently asked me, "Tell me, what do you want us to do now?" I looked up at him with pleading eyes and said, "I want to go to my real mother." He asked me if I knew her address or where my maternal grandfather lived. I tried to remember, and then something clicked. "There was a government school across from his house," I said. It was called Shaukat Memorial. When I mentioned this, the imam nodded and said, "That should help us find the place. It won't be too difficult now. I'll go find out myself," Imam Sahib said, and left me with his wife and daughters while he went to search for my grandfather's house. 2 hours later, he returned. But he wasn't alone. With him was a woman in a burqa. The moment she removed her veil, I burst into tears and ran into her arms. Imam Sahib had brought my mother. We were meeting after almost 2 years. Both of us wept uncontrollably, embracing each other tightly. Imam Sahib's wife and daughters tried to comfort us. After some time, when our tears had dried and the grief had slightly eased, I told my mother everything that had happened the night before. She clutched her chest in shock. Tears streamed down her face as she said, "It was my mistake. I never should have left you with your father. I should have taken you with me. I thought he would come after me, try to reconcile, and everything would return to normal. I never imagined he would send divorce papers and end our marriage just like that. I asked her, "Why did you argue with father? Why did you leave home?" What she told me next made my blood run cold. Taking the name of my stepmother, my mother said, "Nagina told me that your father was having an affair with another woman. She claimed he secretly met her, and her brother had seen it with his own eyes. Coincidentally, your father had started coming home late from work around that time. I believed Nagina and started confronting your father. He grew furious. Our arguments became frequent and intense. Your father hated being accused, and I couldn't understand why he wouldn't just give me a straight answer. He kept saying, 'What kind of woman doubts her own husband?'" My mother paused, trembling. Nagina kept fueling my suspicions against him, and maybe she was doing the same with your father, because he also started arguing more with me. When things became unbearable, Nagina gave me the advice to leave the house. She said that within a few days your father would realize what a big mistake he had made. I foolishly believed her. I thought once I left he would miss me, recognize my value, and come for me. That's why I didn't take you with me. I thought he would at least come for you. "But I had no idea it was all Nagina's scheme," she cried. "She kicked me out of my own home and took my place. Maybe she didn't expect that I would actually leave you behind too. Otherwise, she would have convinced me to take you with me. When your father sent the divorce papers and I found out he had married Nagina, I realized the truth. But it was too late. I wanted to come back and take you, but I had no source of income. I was living in my father's house like a servant. What could I have offered you? I convinced myself that you were safe with your father, that you'd be cared for, so I didn't come for you, thinking it would be better for your future." She broke down again. "But I didn't know that just like Nagina, her brother would turn out to be vile. Her brother destroyed my home, and now he tried to destroy you. Forgive me, my daughter, I made a terrible mistake believing that woman." My mother begged for forgiveness, holding me close and sobbing. "Thank God he protected you. Thank God you're safe." My mother said to me, "I prayed day and night for your safety. Maybe that's why your honor and dignity remained protected last night." I clung to her and cried again. She thanked Imam Sahib and then took me with her to my grandfather's house. It didn't take me long to realize that my uncle, Nagina's brother, had always treated my mother badly. Soon after, my mother took up a job for my sake, and we started living separately, cutting off all ties with my uncle. We were confined to a single room, but life slowly began to find peace. As I grew older, I started helping my mother too. I'd bring home small tasks or odd jobs, and somehow our life's wheels kept moving. Even today, my mother and I live in that same small room. She works and I work too. I never once looked back toward my father's home. A few days after that horrific night, we found out that my uncle, the one who had tried to betray me, was hit by a truck while searching for me in the dark and lost his life on the spot. Later, my father also tried to find me. He eventually reached my mother's house, but by then my mother had told him everything, from the beginning to the end. She told him about the phone calls from Nagina, about how she poisoned her against him. Hearing all this, my father was stunned. Then he told my mother that Nagina had done the same to him, constantly turning him against her. That's why he too had started arguing and fighting more. Everything became clear. My father realized the truth, and in his eyes, Nagina's image crumbled. But he had no choice but to keep her in his life. After all, she was the mother of his son. My father apologized to both me and my mother. We forgave him. And my mother also apologized, admitting that she had, in a way, destroyed her own home by believing Nagina. But even after all of that, we chose not to reestablish a relationship with him. Today, my mother and I live a very simple, modest life, but we are happy because we're together. This entire experience taught us one painful truth. A woman should never trust an outsider in the matters of her home. Because women like Nagina, to get what they want, can destroy someone else's entire family without a second thought.